grandparents that work during the week.
There.
I'll call the public hearing to order. Would the clerk please read the roll?
Mr. Amrine?
Here.
Ms. Selko? Here. Mr. Clapper?
Here.
Mr. De Leon?
Here.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Here.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Here.
Mr. Turner?
Here.
Need a motion to excuse Mr. Hook and Mr. Sidoti.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, Bridget, oh. Something new. Rhonda.
This is a public hearing for our
I've been here too long.
our tax budget for 2025. The tax budget is required to be submitted and adopted annually by July 15th, and we have to submit it to the county by July 20th.
Are there any questions from the audience? Seeing none. Next item?
Thank you. In accordance with the requirements of Ohio Revised Code 4301.82, regulating the application to City Council for the expansion of the downtown Kent designated outdoor refreshment area, the DORA, the Kent City Council is conducting this public hearing to afford the public the opportunity to comment on a proposed application that, if approved, will expand the boundary of the DORA to include 141 East Summit Street. The DORA allows for the sale of alcoholic beverages for outdoor consumption within the DORA boundaries.
Any questions from the audience? Seeing none. Thank you, Eric. The public hearing is adjourned. We'll move into our committee meeting. Committee of the whole, first up, boards, commission interview process. Gwen, I think you brought this to our attention.
I did.
About the logistics of it. And we had Amy Polder, clerk friends, and we have something, so where do you want to go with this?
Well, I thought our interview process for boards and commissions could be tweaked. I think that it would be preferable to have it more like a job interview and less like a public trial. So as it is now, when people come in, it's all of council, it's on the record, the city staff is waiting until the entire interview process is over. Sometimes that can go an hour. It seems to me that we could probably streamline it. Based on some of the information that Amy collected, I know that cities are bounced all over the place. A lot of them are mayoral appointment. I think that from what I've heard from council members, they'd like to be part of the interview process. So what I would suggest, and obviously I would like to discuss it and hear what other council members have to say, is what I would suggest is that interviewees are interviewed before a council meeting by a number of council members. It can be all of the council members, but like a minimum number, say, 2 council members and the mayor, or, the department chairs, or a substitute. So either all of council or however, whatever set minimum number of council members present, and that we interview, candidates one at a time and having the others wait in the hallway so that nobody gets an unfair advantage based on hearing questions or others' responses. Whether or not it's on YouTube or not makes no difference to me, but I think that would provide a more realistic setting, as more of a job interview process, rather than having candidates come up while audience member and city staff are kind of growing more eager to go home, I guess I could say, right? It seems unreasonable to have people wait an hour for a whole interview process to go on. I don't think that's totally fair to candidates. I'd like to be able to give them our undivided attention, non-rushed, in a more realistic job interview setting, if that makes sense.
I guess, does anybody else want to weigh in this, and we'll have Amy go over the list she gathered. Might be an idea there. Heidi?
Can I just ask a question?
Oh, go. Well,
So is it something that we could do through, a virtual means, or is it required to be in person? Does it require to be in person?
Well, if all of you are going to be there, then it's a meeting and it has to be open and to the public.
Mhm.
If you take the approach that maybe, you send Bridget and maybe less than a quorum of council people, then it can be behind closed doors. And maybe the people that are on that committee can come back out and just give their opinions to you, who they think would be good for each of the boards.
I think getting to your question in terms of virtual or not, I believe this is a standing rule type situation. Like, you can decide if you as a council are okay with virtual participation.
Okay,
I
that's
mean,
what I was asking.
I
As
don't
long
think
as
it's
it's not-
statutory that requires, it's not like the meetings, right?
For the
Interviews, just interviews.
well, again.
As long as it's not a public meeting, as long as you don't have a quorum.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heidi, back to you.
Yeah, I just wondered, I kind of like Hudson's approach, not the weekend part. But could we not do this in an exec session?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like, I think it's valuable for us to at least have the opportunity to meet the candidates and to be able to express our, to be able to ask questions if we want. It has become, in my opinion, it has taken up too much of the public's time, I think, and also, whoever's waiting. But I wonder if that would streamline it enough to be in an exec session. It would take some of the heavy pressure off of people. They're not on TV. They don't have an audience waiting, to get to their topic. So other than that, I mean, the weekend business is not what I would want.
They're not paid.
She's asking,
Melissa, do you have
Sorry.
logistically, how does that work? I actually have a question back. I didn't look at Hudson's, but are you thinking that would be at the end of the meeting or beginning, or, because the challenge at the end of the meeting is knowing when are we going to be done?
No, I would say.
And I hate to make applicants sit for 2 hours.
I think that it works out that we have the meeting earlier, before the time of the public meeting. But then again, you never know how long it's going to go. That might incentivize us to streamline it a bit.
That's kind of like what Glenn started
Yeah.
with, right?
Yeah, and then,
Before-
maybe
Have a
not
meeting
all
before.
council members would be able to be there, and that would be okay, but we'd have the option. We wouldn't fall into, there's a personnel committee that gets to do all this, and nobody else participates, but it could be optional for people to come ahead of time, maybe a 6 o'clock start or something like that, depending on the number of candidates, really, the number of appointments. Because we used to do that anyways, it seemed. I'm always paranoid that we are going to have a 6:30 start or something because of that. Maybe there's some internal work we can do, too, regarding reducing the number of questions per person or something like that. I liked how we had written questions before. we could choose from, but maybe it's like 3 questions and they're done.
We can do that, however you want to do it.
Gwen, you got further?
Yeah, so we used to have 3 written questions ahead of time. I'd love to be able to get back to that, to where people get asked the same questions. That's fine. I think exec session before a council meeting would be great. There's nothing that holds it. Everybody, if you know, so long as, I think people, if they need some flexibility with work schedules and things like that, but if everybody wants to attend, that would be great too. So an exec session beforehand would work, and I think Amy could probably schedule it so we don't have we've got too many candidates per.
Well, so on that
Perhaps.
note, a lot of our terms expire at the end of the year. Prior to my starting, they were all kind of moved into that direction. So that is when we started doing the November and December meetings. When we had, the last 2 years we
The
did
extra
that.
meeting.
We had an extra meeting to try to get a large portion of those people in. And that worked out great. I thought I got a lot of good feedback from council saying that they really liked seeing a room full of people, you know, that were interested in volunteering their time, and it's worked out great the last 2 years. So we would need to address how that would be handled as well. Would you like the same process?
I'm not opposed to that at all.
Okay.
I just don't think, if we could just get away from the interviews being during council meetings,
Okay.
I think that's cumbersome.
Well, they're going to have to be during a council meeting, because you can't, you have to start all public meetings in the public. Even if it's just to say, this meeting's to order, let's go into executive session. In order to do that, you would have to have a quorum before you could go into the executive session. So you have to make sure that.
So we either need less than a quorum, non-exec,
Yes.
or a full quorum
Yes.
exec. Okay.
I suppose
Yeah.
we could always do, if there's a lot on when we get a lot of candidates, we probably could maybe have a special meeting just to do that only.
That's what we did.
That's what we do in November
That's what
and
we did in
December.
November and
Yeah,
December.
that's what we do in November and December.
And that's-
So, for instance, in August, we have 1 person. So this new process could potentially be that new for that 1 person. You know what I mean? So like, not every month we have board and commission interviews. The majority of them are going to happen at the end of the year. So we'll just have a few of these, you know, scattered throughout the year.
So for when it's just 1 person, it could just be prior to
Yes.
the council meeting. When we have a larger slate of candidates, it's a
Mhm.
separate meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine with me.
Anybody else?
Robin.
Oh, Robin?
Yeah, I have a little concern about transparency. I didn't know really that there was, I don't know, a lot of anxiety expressed by candidates based on the number of people from the public being in, and not only that, we're looking at executive session, which means that people who come in are going to have to leave, and they're not going to be a part of the process. I didn't know that the process, to be honest with you, was that intimidating. I thought it was a process of people who get up and have an opportunity to express exactly what they're about, listen to the questions. I never thought people were intimidated by that. Had you heard that? I mean, if people indicated to you that, you know, when I came in, I was just so afraid because there were people. This is a council. This is a public area where people come in all the time, and you know, these people who are willing to extend themselves a little more, to come out and express themselves. That's all they're doing. Nobody's beating up on them. We're just asking questions. I think that the people like are here tonight. I understand the expansive aspect, perhaps, of the But I think that the general public ought to be engaged as much as they can be. They're not going to vote, but they can sit here and listen to people because these people represent them as well. We may appoint them, but these people who come to these meetings also want to be participants, I believe, at least in the process. So I'm a little skeptical about us going into exec sessions and things like that. I just didn't think the process was either that cumbersome or that difficult, and we can wiggle around on that a bit. But I think that in having people from the general public involved is not a bad thing.
Anybody else? Jeff?
Just to speak to that, I think that fear of public speaking is a very common fear amongst people. And when I went through the interview process for planning commission, I'd say it was mildly intimidating. Having been to meetings before, I kind of knew what to expect. But I think that if what we're trying to do is alleviate people's hesitation to maybe apply. So if anybody was hesitant to apply for that fear, which I think is a very common fear, this opens the door to them a little bit more easily. I think what we're trying to achieve is just attract more applicants if we can.
Anybody else?
Robin wants to respond.
I want to follow.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I think another aspect of intimidation is that if they come before us, people they have to make a presentation to. I think the other people are, while I don't think that they're as intimidated by the crowd as they are about the process engaging and us asking questions of them. I don't view it the same way I think that you do, that having people who are showing up to our meetings are the intimidating factor. The intimidating factor is probably they're going before people who are going to be asking them questions in a process. I mean, and I think it's important that these people have an opportunity to understand how their government works. Maybe they don't like the questions we even ask. I mean, but they will understand better exactly how our processes work. And so I believe that it's important to engage them in that. I get it. I understand what you're saying. I mean, about that concern, but I think that's probably less a concern other than them coming up before us and being asked questions.
Okay.
Although if you want to do them in writing prior, I mean, that's, but.
Yeah, I got to say that I think part of the flaw with this, we don't ask them questions. We go around here, somebody will come up and say, this is why I want to be on your board. And I'll ask, are there any questions? Nobody says anything. So part of it's us. Not 100% time, but 80% of the problem is us. And as far as three people being appointed from one board, yes, there ought to be some, I agree with what was said, there ought to be separation. The people in this room shouldn't be listening to the next person wants the same job and the next person wants the same job. But part of the problem's us. I hate to tell you that, but I'm with you. Part of the problem is us. Heidi.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that one. Part of the problem's us. I think I've seen some really long interviews that got kind of squirmy. And so maybe along with the 3-question limit, maybe some people, we don't need to question them because they did such a great presentation. They answered all our questions. But maybe we should also put a time limit, we have a 3-minute public time limit for people to come to our council meetings at the beginning and talk. Why we allow some people to go on and on for 15 minutes during these interviews when it should just be, we get to meet them, we get to hear a little bit about them, and then, maybe there's, they've got their written work. We usually have enough information to make a decision. And then we have that separation between the time that we interview and the time that we make our decisions, so that if we have some questions, we can follow up. I have done that. You know, especially when there's several people going for the same position. You know, I just think that, I don't know about how to get away from the intimidation factor. It's just, it is intimidating. To some degree, to some people, it may not be so intimidating. They're used to it. But I do think that coming before not just council, but a room full of people might be extra intimidating to people. We should do what we can to make it a friendlier environment and not interrogate people. So I have seen a lot of questioning at times, and it just goes kind of over the limit. Maybe we can do a better job in asking some questions. So I think it's more an internal process, and maybe with that separate from the public meeting in some way, even having it public before the meeting, a time where we're not going to have a room full of people necessarily for that event. Gwen, do you have any thoughts?
I guess it sounds like to me that there isn't a whole lot of opposition to having the interviews before a council meeting and I guess it would be either a exec session or a public. I guess our choices, whether we want an exec or public meeting prior to a council meeting, except for during those months where we have a lot of candidates, in which case we'll schedule a special meeting. So do we want it to be exec or public? I'm assuming that if it's a public meeting, we're probably not going to get a lot of audience members, but I don't know if we're required to have it on YouTube or not.
No.
No. So it can be a public meeting that's open to the public if you want to come and watch interviews, but it'll be public because we can all attend. Does that make sense? So that would be my motion when we're ready for that. I know we're going to go to the audience first, but.
I guess it's time. Where do you want to go with this?
All right. I move that we have, let me see, what did I just say? I move that we have a public meeting prior to council meetings for, or a public meeting. I'll just leave it at that, because then it could be scheduled based on when the clerk sees it's most appropriate based on the number of candidates. Public meeting for board and commission interviews is my motion.
I would second that.
Further discussion, Gwen?
No.
Robin, further discussion?
No.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. The next City Hall project update, Melanie.
Well, when Melanie finishes the building,
Oh, I'm sorry.
it'll be easier to go into exec session because you'll have your room right there. So I kept thinking that during the that
You
discussion.
can slip right out.
Right.
It'll be great. Well, if anybody drove by today and you looked at the site, it was a little panicking. There were no cars on site, and I'm like, are we waiting for a storm? What's going on? But I had my meeting, and I walked in and said, what's going on? And they're like, well, everybody's inside the building. So good news! All the inside work is beginning. The painters were on site today, so the first floor there where council chambers is, that was where they were actually beginning doing their painting today. They're finishing the third floor this week as well with all of their drywall. Then they'll move up there to do the painting and then go down to the second floor to finish drywall and all that work, and then that'll be painted the following week or the first part of August. So pretty exciting there that we're already moving on to painting and getting all of that completed. They are going to begin to finish and close off the elevator on Monday, so that also will be functionable and in place. As we saw it, it was all in. It just wasn't being used because not all of the work around it had been completed. They're also beginning the installation of the light fixtures on the inside of the building, and by the 22nd, you should begin to see our lettering on the front of the building going up. So it will actually say Kent City Hall. I'm a little nervous about that because the moment that goes up, then everybody's going to be going, when are you done? When do we move in? When can we come and see you? So it'll be an exciting time, but you'll see that going up. And then actually the first week of August, they will begin their site work. They're going to start on the front corner of Haymaker and Water Street. because they want to make sure that they get everything in there, and then they'll kind of work their way back and around. So if you also see on the outside, they've also begun to put up the outside lighting, which I'm super excited about because that's the one that will have all of the changing colors. So from time to time, season to season, we can change the outside lights that will illuminate those long bands of brick. So pretty exciting because it'll be a fantastic looking building. So other than that, it's moving along well. And we did have a chance to peek inside, and it truly did look like little ants on an anthill with all the people that were in there. So a lot of people in a small space, but it looks like they're really moving into high gear to get this completed. And Mr. De Leon, they did change out that piece of glass.
I've seen that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
Any other questions for Melanie? Seen that? Thank you,
So
Melanie.
don't worry when you don't see any cars. They found off-site parking because they know they're going to have to start doing site work. So when there's no cars, they're still working. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to community development, Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes, up first, we have Bridget talking about decarbonization planning for city buildings.
Yes, hello. I am going to do a brief introduction, but we actually have a guest tonight. We have a consultant. As you know, we passed our climate action plan back in 2023. Officially, as of Monday, too, we have a full-time sustainability coordinator. Julie is officially on full-time and actually is down in the office with us. She was kind of put up in the, we called it the tower. She couldn't see any of us, but now she's in amongst us, so it's very exciting. NOPEC provided the city with an in-kind grant of assistance that is coming through World Connect. I have Andrew Smizer here who's going to speak on the topic. They did an extensive review of which you got the full packet. It's 27 pages. It goes into the 4 areas that were included in this report: the analysis of the city's current energy, carbon use and emissions portfolio, an evaluation of the sources and strategies we can look at to reduce those emissions, obviously in collaboration and in conjunction with our climate action plan. It also included an assessment of 4 possible on-site solar locations, 2 of which we are going to ask council's input on tonight as our primary goals. We still will try to get for all 4 sites potentially, but we would like some input on 2 sites. One that would be a ground array and one that would be on a building. We do have some input from the report and the staff on that. And it also included a review of best practices that we can consider for renewable energy credits. I did want to highlight that this is something that is required, as well as the climate action plan and the energy efficiency audits, to apply for grant funding. There's a lot of, we hear it all the time about funding. I can tell you that Julie is monitoring it very closely and is engaged in all of the state programs and agencies that are going to be doing this money. Kent is small. We will not be able to apply to direct federal funding for many of these, if any. We're under what's called the balance of states. That means the state of Ohio is an entitlement entity that receives money from the federal agency, and then it becomes a pass-through to us. We actually are under the balance of states for several other programs. We were under that for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, which was a demolition grant program back during the mortgage crisis. We are under the balance of states for the housing rehab program, which is actually a HUD program known as Home Ownership Made Easy, that is funneled to the state and then given to us through a program called CHIP, which is Community Housing and Preservation. So it is a common practice, and it doesn't mean that we can't get it, but I do want, we often get sent links that are direct to federal, and if you dig in the details, which is what Julie has been doing and I do as well, we often have to wait for these state agencies to come up with those rules and regulations. The good news is with tonight's presentation, your input on the solar, as well as the energy audits, the climate action plan, the other steps that we have been basically aggressively pursuing over these last few years, we will be in perfect position to apply for these funds once they come through, often the Ohio EPA, as well as Department of Development. Literally multiple state agencies are going to have this funding. They are just working through how they have to respond to the Fed, and then we have to then respond to them. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to bring Andrew up to the mic while I turn on his presentation, and I'm going to let him take over.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am Andrew Smizer. I am a sustainability consultant with World Connect. We're a global energy company, but we are specifically working with NOPEC to fund a decarbonization study for 5 cities. This is the first round that has gone through. Kent was one of those 5 cities. So we have gone through, like we do for Fortune 100 companies and all sorts of organizations, gone through your energy use, determined kind of where your carbon footprint is now and ways to reduce that. And so we'll get to pictures in a minute. So you have the paper version of it. Basically, the first part is just an executive overview. It talks about what we found for your city. A significant part of your carbon footprint is in liquid fuels. So you have 3 different components that we looked at. Oh, thanks. That helped. Could have brought my computer up. Okay. 3 different components that we were looking at specifically: buildings, natural gas in your buildings, and then the liquid fuels, which is the gasoline and diesel that is used in your vehicles. So what we found is the largest component in terms of your carbon footprint is still the electricity. It's also easiest to mitigate, either through inexpensive purchase of renewable energy credits, contracting for renewable generated power, or, as we're going to talk about further, putting solar on your facilities. So those are kind of the easiest ones to deal with. The scope 1, which is the fuel that you burn, is the hardest thing to get rid of. It's the gas, it's the diesel, it's the natural gas in your buildings. How to mitigate those is really the toughest part. The liquid fuels is 53% of your total scope 1. So when you combine all of those liquid natural gas, diesel, and gasoline, if you could electrify your fleet, you would eliminate 50% of that scope 1 carbon footprint. So that is one of the recommendations that we have. It also ties in with putting solar on your buildings and on your grounds, because that way you're killing both of those sources at the same point. So that is really kind of the high level where we started. Sorry, just looking through a couple of these. City Hall was not included, but it did include 16 buildings. There were about 57 random electric accounts, everything from street and parking lights to...
Not letting me sign in, I apologize.
That's
But
okay.
they do have a hard copy.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Sorry, audience.
Sorry, we'll hold.
The credentials will not be
We have
logged
extra.
in 1 years, right?
And then obviously the liquid fuels. So those are the 3 components that we looked at. It was comprehensive. When you get to this second, page 3, you'll see a graph. And we call this the glide path. So that it kind of tells you how can we address the carbon footprint. Where do you get to and how do you hit those targets? So the first bar is the baseline, and this is in metric tons of carbon. So once you do all the calculations, you figure out, okay, everything combined, 5,100 metric tons of carbon is what the city, and this is just city operations. This is not people driving on your streets. This is not the holistic city. This is the city operations only. About 5,100 metric tons of carbon. If we looked at the 4 sites, and we did 4 because you have 4 good opportunities, the NOPEC funding allows us to do a deep dive into 2 of those. So we'll be full financial analysis of 2 of the sites, but they're all good ones. So we brought it to you to kind of help us select which of those 2 to do. So if you did all 4 sites, you're looking at a reduction of 628 metric tons. That leaves you with, in order to hit a 50% reduction, which is one of the targets that the city of Kent has, you're looking at about another almost 2,000 metric tons that you would need to mitigate in some way, either through renewable procurement, through your electric supplier, or through buying renewable energy certificates. that would hit you your 50%, and after that, it's kind of it gets harder at that point. So and then you're looking at what's remaining is the scope 2 additional electricity, and then the scope 1, which is all of that stuff that you burn in-house. When you're looking at the page 4, you can see the graph that shows the carbon emissions. And there are two obviously ones that you want to hit. Those first two on the left are the water treatment plant and the water reclamation facility. They are the largest electricity users by far. They also have a decent natural gas load, but the electricity is really what pushes those buildings to have a higher carbon footprint. And both of those are two of the locations where it makes a lot of sense to do on-site solar. So we'll talk about those. Obviously, as the buildings get smaller and the way they're used changes, you kind of progress to the buildings that have a very minimal carbon footprint. Looking at the on-site solar options, and there's a summary at the back, so you can get a sense of kind of what we're looking at. The new safety facility, which is the police station, you can see the way kind of it would lay out on the roof. Some of that would change a little bit as the final design goes into place, but it is an opportunity to be there. It would probably, out of the two buildings that we're looking at, this is the one that people might be able to see, but it's on the top of the building. It's kind of hard to see the solar. The second one is actually on top of this building. You can see that on page 6. It is the flat portion of the fire station. So that is actually a fairly sizable array. It generates about 28% of the total used by this building. So a sizable portion to kind of address the energy use that happens in this facility. The next ones are actually the much larger facilities. These are ground-mounted arrays that we'd be recommending at both the water reclamation plant and the water treatment facility. You can see they're significantly bigger in terms of what they produce, but with the water reclamation plant using about 1.7 million kilowatt hours a year, you're still not going to be able to mitigate that. You still need to buy electricity for the location, unless you wanted to clear all the trees, and you'd still run out of space before you were able to generate enough power. The idea is to kind of reduce where you can and generate as much as you can in a reasonable footprint. And then the final one, which is really I think the best opportunity, is at the water treatment plant. And you can see that at this point in this preliminary design, we left the set of trees in there. If they're, this is always the debate, right? If they're not there for a reason, protecting some portion of a stream or something that is built into the ground there, taking them out and adding solar is actually probably more effective. But then you'll have the debate of, well, we're cutting down trees to add solar panels, so there are questions on all sides. But this is the best opportunity, and you can actually, just with what is there, generate about 74% of the total energy used for that facility by adding solar panels. And then we have the kind of summary table as the last page, kind of brings those all four together to give you a sense of kind of where they fit. The goal is to select two of these, to do a deep dive in, to kind of work through all the opportunities in terms of funding, in terms of what kind of rebates and incentives that you can get through various state and federal policies, and then kind of what do we expect it's going to cost, what do we think the payback is going to be. All of these will be good investments in the long term. It's just a question of how quickly you want that payback to be. So the water treatment plant is one strong recommendation. The other ones are all options. It's just a question of what you want to see from this first study. If you do both of the big ones, it'll tell you both of the big ones. But if you do a big one and a little one, it'll give you the full spectrum of what a different size solar array will cost and generate over time. Do you have any questions?
Very good, thank you very much. Other questions from council?
No,
Yes,
sorry.
Heidi.
Oh, I have so many questions. But I won't ask them all because other people will have some too. So I'm looking at the safety facility, that would be the police
Yes.
facility, and I saw that we could put some rooftop solar on. They're pretty high user of electricity, not higher than the fire station,
Yes.
but is that like a function of,
Typically, it's how it's used and how, so both of these are 24-hour buildings. That one's just bigger.
okay, it's
So-
bigger, but it's still gas, yeah. I guess one of my questions was, did we look at the idea of doing like solar awnings, solarizing the awnings and charging the cruisers and, you know, like,
So, charging the cruisers is an excellent idea. Solar awnings, you run into the problem that they significantly increase the cost. Because then you have to build the panels to put the pillars on, in terms of like a carport.
there are some, there's already a carport there, but you probably thought of that.
So the ones that were done on this building are the ones where the roof has large open areas and are not affected by shading.
I see it, yeah.
And so that's the real limitation. So you look for the biggest open space on a roof and something that's not going to be shaded by the rest of the building coming over it during various parts of the day.
Mhm. Okay, and it's possible, you said it's
And
possible
none
that
of-
people can see
None of these
this.
studies are final.
Yeah.
Like, they can all be tweaked
Okay.
as we work through the process. This
Mhm.
is just a kind of initial layout.
Mhm.
We do this to get the decarbonization set up so that we
Yeah.
know, okay, if you generate this much, that's this much less carbon that you'll
Mhm.
have.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been told that one of our values is that we want to be a model. Nobody goes to the water treatment plant. I wish they did, but, you know, there's some security issues around that. It's kind of tucked away out there. It would be good. It would have a big bang, it looks like, for the buck. But we really, at least I don't know if I could speak for all of council, but it seems to me a good idea to have some visible project that, you know, will inspire others in the city and in other locations to do something similar.
And the staff agrees. We think that to put it on a building is going to be more basically performative. The reduction will be there, but it's not going to be significant. However, the water plant would, so perhaps it would be advisable to look at one that would allow for a larger ground array that may not be visible where, you know, everybody drives there sees it, but at least it is reducing our carbon footprint, which is something the city is striving for. And then we could still do one on top of rooftop, but I do think we do want to, visibility is important, but reduction is actually our goal.
Correct.
So, and there are good ways to demonstrate solar generation. They have graphics that you can put up. You can have a billboard. Even if people can't see the stuff on the roof or what's out by the water treatment plant, there are very good ways, very good dashboards that show how the power is being generated throughout the course of the day, every hour, all the time. So it's possible to highlight that even if people can't see the actual panel.
Additional questions, Heidi?
Maybe, but I'll let somebody else have the floor.
Council, any other questions from council? Not right now. Just to clarify, so your recommendations, we get to pick 2 of the 4 on this menu. Got it. And I know that the water treatment plant is one of the that you recommend. What would be your second as an expert in the field, your second recommendation?
So my second one would actually be, sorry, it's hiding from me. Realistically, the fire station roof, just the layout of it, will be the most cost effective. Because it'll be one set, it's all here, you only have one set of wiring, it's easier to do. So it'll be slightly less expensive per kilowatt to install.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Jerry?
With what you just said, the fire station, what is the projected recoup of getting your money back out of your investment?
So we haven't run the numbers on this, because that's the next step. So this was just we generated the helioscope to determine what the production is. Working through the cost is the next step. NOPEC is paying for 2 of them. So that'll be what we figure out. What we find is for larger arrays, like the water treatment plant, the cost per kilowatt is significantly less. So you're talking about 4-year, 5-year paybacks with the incentives that are available right now. The roof here is probably closer to 7, but it pays back, and then the panels last for 25 years. They're warranted that long. We know that they generate long past that, so you're still getting power. It just becomes a question of this is all power that you're not going to buy for the next 30 to 40 years.
And so what is the maintenance in 20 years on this?
You replace the inverters once in about 15 years, which is the component that changes it from DC to AC. That's about it. Everything is warranted, all the maintenance, all the facilities. Basically, the installers warrant it for 30 years, and we put in a price in there for at 15 years when we do the financials. At 15 years, we say, okay, we expect you'll have to replace the inverters at some point. This is the cost for that. So you see, the finances is all great, and then 15 years, you see a little blip where you owe some money, but other than that, it's basically free power.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious what the next step cost-wise is.
For you, nothing. NOPEC has provided the grant. It includes the whole decarbonization study and these 2 deep dives.
That includes maintenance.
I'm sorry?
That includes maintenance?
So the installation, when you decide to go ahead and put solar on any of your facilities, the cost to install those, there will be a cost. NOPEC is not covering that, as far as I know, although they have some programs that they can help you with that. But we'll figure out what the cost of it, the installation is at that point.
Any other questions? Yes, Melissa.
So just to clarify, the water treatment plant, as shown here, does not require any trees to be cut.
Right.
So that's the one that's creating the largest solar production. So that's your number 1 recommendation. Okay.
Further? Anyone from the audience have a question? Okay. Back to council. Bridget, you need a motion.
Yes, please. Basically direct staff on which 2 of the 4 facilities we can move forward with World Connect and NOPEC with regards to getting into that data analysis, that budget analysis.
Okay. Yes, Heidi.
I would like to make the motion. It seems like we've kind of come to some degree of understanding. I would like to move that we select the water treatment plant and the fire station.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Jeff, discussion?
I just think that, it checks both boxes. One, we're going to get a really nice return with the water treatment plant, and then the other one is kind of something that we can hopefully find some way for the public to see it, to know that we're doing something. And it's one of our flagship buildings. I think that, it's just the beginning. But it's a nice beginning.
Jeff, do you have anything you want to add?
Nothing further.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I echo what Heidi says, but I also want to say that I've been on council for 16 years, and this has been one of our goals, and it's good to see that we are making some strides to achieve it. So, just took 16 years, but that's good.
Further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Thank you very much.
Ooh. Thank you.
Yeah. The key word.
Yay.
Before the motion. Oh, okay.
Up next, we have proposed operating agreement for the sale of adult use marijuana. Bridget.
Yes, thank you. As you recall, I was here a little over a month ago with regards to the zoning matter for adult use cannabis dispensaries. Now, again, that is specific to those that have not been approved or are new, and there aren't even licenses available for that. So that matter has been addressed. However, the issue, too, when it was passed, it included language that any existing medical marijuana cultivator, processor, dispensary were allowed to get what would be called a dual-use operating license. Provisional licenses will be issued. They're good for, basically valid for 2 years, and they are only available to an existing one of those facilities. As you're all aware, we have a medical marijuana dispensary at 331 East Main Street that has been in operation for 2 years now. And they are eligible to seek the dual-use operating license. Now, I will say that the statute, the new statute of the Ohio Revised Code that addresses this does allow for legislative authorities to prohibit. However, the issue, too, that was passed by the voters also allows any existing dispensary, cultivator, or processor to move the item right to the ballot and have the population vote on whether or not they were allowed to proceed with the dual use. Understanding and recognizing this language, the city manager, the law director, and myself feel that entering into an operating agreement in a professional and manner that allows for everyone to be clear as their expectations is a much better approach because it provides guardrails. If we were to outright and deny the dual use and it goes to the ballot, the only rules and regulations that would apply would be the medical marijuana dispensary zoning code that is already in existence and applies to that facility, and the state laws. So we spoke to the property owner, who is going to be here and going to talk in a few minutes. We have been working together on an agreement of which you have a draft before you. Most of that is not going to change. There may be a little bit of wording that has to be adjusted, but it does hold the facility accountable for all of the same measures that are in place now in terms of lighting, signs, vehicular traffic, parking. All of those will still apply. So the administration feels that this dual use, or this operating agreement for the dual use agreement allows the city to have a little bit of say as this moves forward. I will also say, while they have been cleared for the provisional license, it has not been issued, and adult use cannabis is not for sale in Kent. I will let you know as that proceeds forward, but at this point it has just been approved with regards to, because they are an existing medical marijuana dispensary. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jamie Julik, the property owner, who'd come up and we've been working with on this agreement.
Good evening. My name is James Julik. I'm the property owner at 331 East Main, where Bliss, Ohio has been operating for, it's actually a little over a year now. Yeah. To us, it feels like a couple, right? Yeah. No, but I just want to reiterate that nothing's going to change. It's going to be the same name. It's going to be the same signage. It's going to be the same lighting. Nothing will change on that. It's going to be the same hours that are mandated by the state, which allows 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., no later. We're not asking for anything different than that. It's going to be the same security. Everything's going to be on videos. We're going to have a security guard there every minute that it's open, and use of any type of product on the premises is going to be strictly prohibited, and that will be enforced. When we first got the zoning as a medical marijuana dispensary, there were a lot of concerns that were voiced. I think that was my evening with the zoning commission where I got to play Joan of Arc. And while a lot of the concerns I believe were of the community were certainly well-founded, none of them have come to fruition. And I think Bridget can add from Dr. Martin, our neighbor, the dentist, who was one of the people with some concerns. Nothing has happened. As a matter of fact, our security systems have solved, I believe, a couple of crimes, including an armed robbery over the last year. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Yes, I did want to mention that Dr. Martin actually called me today, and I spoke to him. He was unable to attend because of he had to attend a wake for a relative. But he had said that he's had no problems and that the owner has been very easy to work with. His only question was the parking. He was worried that if they were unable to park on site at 331 East Main and there was overflow, that it would go into his lot. I explained that that's prohibited under zoning law. If that were to happen, he's to let the Community Development Department know immediately, and we would be then contacting Mr. Dulick to address that because the operating agreement would prohibit that. And all of the specifications as they exist and as Jamie explained are in the operating agreement.
Excuse me for interrupting. Did you want to clarify where the armed robbery was?
I believe the armed robbery was at a vape shop that's on North Water Street.
Not at Bliss, Ohio.
No. No, we've had no.
I thought you might want to.
Oh, no. See, yeah,
I thought you might want to answer.
I appreciate you asking that. No. It was at a completely different place, but it was caught on our cameras because we have a complete view of the neighborhood, and it's all recorded and sent to the state.
Very good. Thank you.
Good clarifying question.
Thank you.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
I was wondering too.
Did you have any further? Okay. Does council have questions? Yes, Heidi.
Yeah, well, as a business person, I'm sure that you are anticipating your business to increase in size and customers since this is now opening up a whole new market. The building, the facility itself and your staffing and your parking and everything was sized for one market. Tell me how you're going to be able to accommodate an expansion of your business at that one site.
I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to be exponential. Honestly, I hope it starts to make money so we can and serve the medical marijuana community as well, because right now it's not. It has not in the last year. We've got plenty of parking on site, right next door. And I know I'm not trying to jump ahead on something like that, but if something like that happens where we're seeing an overflow, the most logical place is going to be for us to work out something with the courthouse, which is right next door, not Dr. Martin's place, which is, he's kind of, 8 feet down, something like that. It's going to be across a small grass strip, but we don't even know whether that's going to be there, but we'll be monitoring the situation and adjusting. As far as staffing goes, we're going to keep a couple of bays open. I don't know whether you've ever been in the facility, but a couple of bays open dedicated to just medical marijuana at all times. And it's something where, yes, are we going to staff up a bit? Yes, but it's not going to be anything crazy.
I would like to add, too, that it is not actually 2 new buildings. The zoning code amendment that was just passed to allow dispensaries and cultivators and processors in the industrial district has the exact same parking requirements as the medical marijuana dispensary. So in other words, even if the zoning were to allow this, the parking would be the same. We consider that basically the same as a retail operation with regards to the parking. And he exceeds the parking limit that would be required for that type of land use.
Any additional questions from council? Okay. I know that we've got some members of the audience here that came. If you have questions, Ordinarily, we wait until after a motion, but I know that some of you came specifically for this topic, so I'd like to allow the opportunity to ask any questions if you'd like. Okay, all right. If you have a question, approach the podium and just give us your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Kelly Weimer. I live at 306 North Willow. And I think my biggest question was that this is about legal marijuana, right? I mean, that's the concern of the neighborhoods.
Recreational
Yeah,
and
I mean,
medicinal.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's
I don't know
legal.
a lot of the, I really don't, and because I didn't get a flyer about this, anything, it was like the last 10 minutes I got here, so I was sitting there listening to how we want to protect the carbon footprint and stuff, and it just, as a mom and as somebody that knows that the kids, you don't need parking. You've got 20,000 kids that'll walk constantly to get a drug, and the carbon print on their heart and mind and the parents and the cops and all the other stuff, the garbage and the stuff that comes with a drug is concerning, especially when you hear about you don't want to cut a tree down. I mean, when I sit there, I just think, I understand because I love the environment, but I cannot fathom how we can not really rally around something like that and protect. Well, first of all, you've got 8 vape shops that are going to have it. The pollution that comes from it.
Not
well,
necessarily.
they will have it. No. They'll never have it.
No.
That'll be never
So
in there.
actually, if you could just address
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay. So
Yeah,
what
it's
what the discussion is about a medicinal marijuana at Bliss, Ohio, being permitted to sell recreational marijuana according to state rules, and in this particular instance, the city putting additional rules on top of that. In order to let that go.
Right.
If council chooses to not allow the city to place these rules, then the business owner could take it to the ballot, in which case the state rules would apply. So this doesn't involve any other vape shops or anything like this, and it only specifically involves just this one singular medicinal marijuana business selling recreational marijuana. Council's already discussed recreational marijuana being allowed in different zoned areas, and this is coming from state regulations and city zoning codes. So we're not discussing it beyond that in other vape shops. Hopefully that's helpful.
I guess, so then, since I don't really think how would we as this community be able to stop it? Is there tools that we can have other than voting?
That's outside the scope of what this city council can do.
Okay.
We can really only address the legality of specific businesses and where they can exist according to our code.
And does the city council think that would you guys prefer it to be right there or somewhere where it's like, when you were talking about the solar thing being a good eye contact for this is such a,
Yeah. Well, go ahead, we've got, we'll let Bridget weigh in.
I'm going to speak
help me.
I'm going to speak to, this is an existing medical marijuana facility, so based on the state law that was ballot was passed, they are the only ones that are able to seek the dual use licensing.
Right.
The city actually just passed last month zoning code amendments that any future or new that are not operating now, dispensaries, cultivators, or processing facilities will only be allowed as a conditionally permitted use in the industrial zoning districts, which are outside of the downtown area and are also not abutting typically residential neighborhoods. So this is specific only to this one because it is open and existing. Any future, and at this point there are none that are going to be coming because the licenses currently for the next 2 years provisional are only going to those that are already operating with medical marijuana licenses. If that opens up at the state at some point 2-3 years from now, they would be in the industrial district.
Give me an example.
Mogador Road.
Mogador Road.
Aspects of Lake Road. To be 500 feet away from
residential properties at a minimum.
And so now our concern is the one that's in our residential area, that's the concern we have?
That's what we're discussing
Yeah.
right now.
So, I mean, like what I'm saying is what kind of tools do we have to not let it be like an issue for our neighborhood?
This operating agreement puts in those guardrails and parameters. Without it, the owner of the property can go to the ballot,
Okay.
and the voters can vote on allowing him to have the dual use, but there will be no operating agreement in place. And so the only regulations that he has to follow is the zoning regulations for the medical marijuana, which are currently in place for that property, and the state law. This operating agreement actually gives you some more of those guardrails and boundaries. Without it,
Yeah.
they will not be in place, other than zoning.
Have we seen it work in other areas that really, without that, it's been a disaster? With this, it's been better?
This is new, it's new state law.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is our first trial.
Correct.
So we really we're a guinea pig here.
Well, I wouldn't say guinea pig, we have an agreement.
Yeah. And so, okay, let's say it becomes an issue. Then how does that rectify itself? Like the carbon print, it's rectified 16 years later.
There's language in the agreement that allows both parties, processes and procedures that would address those concerns. But basically, it's a commitment from both parties that we will all be basically operating within the confines of the rules and regulations of it. And as that site's being operated now is exactly how it continues to be operated. There'll be no use on site. He's going to have a security guard. He has to have the cameras and everything. So all of that will still stay in place. So what you're experiencing now, this is new.
Yeah, it's new. And also, is there this committee here, do they have power at all?
This is city council.
Yeah, do they have power to?
They have legislative authority over
this?
Over this.
So in order for them to say yes or no to that'll make this go forward? Like if they all
Correct.
said no, this would have a kind of stop.
No.
It would, but then the owner could take it to the ballot.
Right.
And there would be no operating
Right.
agreement.
Do you think by letting everybody have a vote, it would be more, it might be, it would seem more likely that, I don't think it would pass.
Issue 2 passed with 75% of affirmation here in the
But
city.
that was
of Kent.
medical.
So we'll just actually.
That was recreational.
Oh.
That was issue 2.
Okay.
You bring up excellent
Okay.
questions, and I really appreciate it. Do you have any final comments or questions about this specific
Thing?
discussion?
I guess just, there's nothing that the residents can do, right? I just want to know, I want to be equipped to be able to fight against it. That's what I'm saying. That's all. And I want to know how our neighborhood can do that.
Ma'am, I'm the law director. At this point, there is nothing that the neighbors can do. The only thing you can do is if you see something that you think is going on there, which I think they've been really, they've operated very well. We haven't had any problems with this business. But if that would change, any neighbors see it, call the police. You can call the law department, the CD department, and say, hey, I've got an issue, and we'll be happy to address it with the owners.
Okay, and then my last thing is that I don't think there would be a problem with medical, but when you live in where I live and where my neighbors live, if it's legal, I'm sitting out on my porch and every kid around me is getting high.
Well, that would be illegal, because you have to be
illegal?
21 years old to buy adult use marijuana.
Right.
As a matter of fact, our police chief did a very small random poll amongst police chiefs in other states where he asked them, once you got adult use, what problems did you see? And I believe the chief said unanimously, all of them said, we didn't have a problem with the adult use. We continue to have a problem with the illegal and dark marijuana. So,
Chief, you wanted...
Chief.
Yeah, I would go one step further on that. In the research I did, I specifically sought out communities that were similar to us. They were similar in population, and they were all in college towns.
Right.
So we're talking communities with a population of between 30 and 50,000 residents, similar to what we have here, that also have a university in their town. and that was the experience that they all had, was essentially that it was a non-issue. They did continue to have an illegal market for marijuana use and sales, but the regulated industry stuff didn't present problems. And when I say didn't present problems, that went from issues with community blight, that went into issues with, they didn't have any issues with long lines, traffic problems, parking problems. We went through all that stuff with cities similar to us, and they experienced none of that.
And even like when your kids are outside, like if I'm smoking a cigarette and stuff, and people have problems with cigarette smoking around their kids. If you're living close to a lot of marijuana smoking, you really don't have any rights to say, go in the house.
So, to address that
Yeah.
partially at least, smoking marijuana is still illegal in public places. The current definition of public places, essentially that the state has given us guidance on, is any state-owned or city-owned, local, government-owned property. So somebody can't walk down a sidewalk and smoke marijuana. They can't smoke marijuana in a vehicle. They can't smoke marijuana on the streets, and all that. Businesses can allow the smoking of marijuana, not smoking in the business, I guess, per se, because of Ohio's smoking ban inside of property still applies. Now, if you have an establishment with like an outdoor patio for smoking cigarettes now, they could choose whether or not, that individual establishment could choose whether or not they want to allow people to smoke marijuana on those patios. And there's not a whole lot we would be able to do about that particular odor, because it is up to the establishment to make
And
the
even
decision.
like on College Street, you've got kids on the porch.
It's legal there. It's legal there.
Thank you for letting me.
But I will say this as well. I mean, regardless of whether or not you have a dispensary here in the city, it's still legal for them to possess it, and it's still legal for them to smoke it on that front porch, whether there's a dispensary here or not.
Right. You mean without any kind of buildings?
So if they're on their front porch.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
even if we had no dispensaries in the
Right.
city of Kent, if someone is sitting on their front porch smoking marijuana, it is currently legal right now. Although we have nowhere you can legally purchase marijuana in Ohio, you can legally possess it.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you.
If you have additional questions, you can always contact City Council, our Community Development Director. Our Clerk of Council can forward your email on to City Council, so you can continue the conversation if you have additional questions. Just so you know that's available. Thank you very much. We have additional comments, yes?
Yeah.
Just
my
please,
name's
please,
Dave
yes, your
Smith.
name and address. Thank you very much. You beat me
Yeah.
to it.
My name's Dave Smith. I live at 1613 Woodway Road in the Twin Lakes area. But since the name's already been brought up, I'm a friend of Dr. Martin's, both Dr. Martin's, Dr. Chris and Dr. Carol. And even though, and I talk to him, all the time, including half an hour before I came to the meeting. And just because it's correct that he hasn't noted any adverse effects, it's not correct to say he doesn't have concerns about this, and concerns about the expansion of the building. And this property is not 8 foot above. This property, your property's not 8 foot above.
Just
this
address
property.
council.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But he recognizes that there's nothing that can be done to prevent this from happening. And so I'm just here, I'm an engineer, I read legal documents, and I see all the whereases here. And I think that perhaps there should be some additional whereases to frame the situation under which this legal operating agreement. And the ones I'd suggest are, whereas marijuana continues to be illegal under federal law, and whereas businesses that are violating that federal law have require special security essentially because of situations with the banking laws and federally chartered banks. And whereas the slightly toasted facility does not meet the zoning requirements for a public use facility, those things would be in the framework of why you are allowing this to happen. And that's really all I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the audience? Okay, back to council. If someone's going to make a motion on this, it'll need to be made with emergency. Yes, Robin?
I'd like to move.
With the
So moved.
emergency.
Move to allow with emergency?
Yes.
Second.
There's a second. Jeff? Discussion? Robin, Jeff, and then Heidi, yes.
Yeah, for all the concerns that are being expressed, look, I don't smoke marijuana, and, you know, that's not an issue that confronts me. I certainly understand people who live and that they're creating a concern. The city has worked diligently to ensure that something which is not our doing, actually, although the vote on the marijuana in the community was like 80%. But having said that, our concern at this juncture is to try to ensure that we have better control of the situation. We understand your concerns, both of, Dr. Martin's and yours as well. And our staff has moved to try to address those to ensure that there is something in place that guards that. And so we don't want you to feel that we don't have a sympathy and understanding for what it's always also an educational process. And I think that our chief stood up and explained exactly where we're at. The illegal aspects of it we will enforce, and we will do it with zeal to ensure that your quality of life is not diminished, your businesses aren't diminished. That's something that we will work with great ardor to ensure. But there are some things that we just don't have the control over, that we're trying to gain control over to ensure that this gentleman, that's his business, and it meets the parameters of the law from a state standpoint, so we get it. Dave does this a lot better than I do, explaining exactly what we as a community are aware of and trying to ensure that your quality of life and your children's quality of life is not diminished. We get it.
Yes, Jeff.
I agree with everything that Robin said, and I think the staff has done a great job putting this together. I know that we had a lot of ups and downs through this process once the recreational marijuana became legal. I've been a big proponent of it the entire time, and I think it's going to be a great addition once it's up and running, and we haven't really had any issues going through the medical, and I think recreational will just fall right in line with that.
Heidi?
Yeah, I do want to congratulate our staff for developing this idea. It's brilliant. I think it's going to be a model for other communities to use. I think it's that, if this goes to the ballot in Kent, it's going to win. That's my strong prediction. So we were sort of between a rock and a hard place, and we found a wonderful way to work with the business on this. And, I have a feeling that the business people want to be good citizens too, and we will work to ensure that they are. And we have this tool. This is a tool for us, for the neighborhood, for anybody in the city that's concerned about the abuses that could possibly transpire. we have to be careful not to conflate our concerns with the legal marijuana use with the business side of it, you know, and that's, you know, the voters have spoken, and this is what the, you know, the majority, this is what the majority want. Now we need to learn how to put it in a box and make sure it doesn't impact us negatively, you know, us meaning the community as a whole. And I think that the measures we've taken so far, is we may not be done with this, but with this particular business, I think that this is a really good start to put these guardrails on. Then we need to, you know, then we've also taken that step with identifying where other businesses can locate like this. And we're familiar with this as people. We've been regulating the liquor industry for many years, and so I think this can be done responsibly. And I do want to say that if there's anything that my constituents need from me, that they can see that there's something going on, please let me know, because I'll be happy to work with Bridget, with the business owner, to make sure that this doesn't negatively impact the neighborhood.
Further discussion? Yes, Melissa.
Just a quick comment. Also, thank you to the team to work so hard and with so little guidance from the state, and do it in such a way to balance the needs of our community and our legal obligations and support our business community. And I'm just very proud of the work that you did, so thank you.
Any further? All right, all those in favor signal by aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you.
All right, last on community development is the DORA expansion request. Eric.
Good evening again. I'm here today because the owners of Board and Bevy submitted a request for council to consider the expansion of the DORA to include their business at 141 East Summit Street, just behind us here at the corner of DePeister and Summit. Is a valid liquor permit or close in proximity to the existing DORA, this is a reasonable request. The expansion of the DORA to include 141 East Summit will allow patrons of legal age to enjoy alcoholic beverages out on their patio. I know that Bridget also checked with Chief Samuels and Chief Shear about any concerns that they might have with this, which they had none. So I'm here tonight to request council's authorization to approve the DORA boundary expansion request with emergency.
Questions from council? Yes, Melissa.
Just as a matter of public record, can you just tell us where the expansion will include? I know that we have had a chance to review it, but just for public record, could you just explain?
Yes, so we'll cross South DePeister Street at the intersection of South DePeister and 59, head southbound to Summit Street and South DePeister. It will be on the west side of the center line of the road. It'll go along the sidewalk of the fire station and include the property lines that encompass 141 East Summit.
Thank you.
Further questions from council? Yes, Jeff.
Is there a reason like that has to be such a finite path? Could it not include down to Water Street the other way for people that would be coming up from Franklin through the bike trail connector and coming across the other way, or coming up Summit, I guess?
I think this was the closest way to connect it to the
I didn't know if it
existing
could be
DORA.
encompassing, or we had to go just the narrowest path, or it could be more encompassing.
And the only reason we're including them is because they were the ones who made that request.
So I think the answer is, Jeff, it could be more if you wanted. I think we were trying to stick to what was on the table and not necessarily open up an area that we hadn't really thought about or talked to business owners about. This we know, and this basically connects through the city building, so we're the main properties are, that'll be adjacent to it. So it was an easy yes for our recommendation of yes for us.
I was just wondering if somebody's at the pub and they want to walk up Summit Street from where the farmers market is and just directly walk across over, then they're going to have to leave the DORA boundary to get there from that direction, which might be common because maybe somebody gets a drink at the farmers market and is walking home that way on a Saturday or whatever the case may be. So it technically puts them outside of the zone.
Yeah, point taken.
To clarify, you could, we can amend, this has not
Yeah.
been submitted yet.
Okay.
So we can amend that footprint to include that. So you could approve the expansion of it to include that area in addition to the parcel that includes 141 East Summit.
Okay.
That would not be an issue. I would ask perhaps, though, that you let us sketch it out just to make sure that but verbally and visually, I don't think that should be an issue or problem,
Okay.
so.
Does the chief need to review that?
Not on the door boundaries. We just actually asked, I asked the two chiefs as a courtesy, because I knew they'd be strolling right by their buildings, and I'm like, I want to make sure they're okay with people walking in front of their buildings with Dora cups. So they'll see the application or anything like that, but Jeff's point has merit, and we can absolutely include that area in case somebody were to traverse that way. It might be safer.
So if there's a motion tonight on it, if there was a motion that council wanted to consider that, would we need to bounce it back to you and then it would come back to council?
If you could actually make the motion to authorize the administration to look at that, and as long as it didn't create any violations with the DORA regulations, that we could amend the map that we'd be submitting to the state in the application to include that area that Jeff just indicated, and then we don't have to come back, we can move forward
Do we
with
need
it.
another public hearing?
No, because it's about expanding that specific parcel. Although maybe, you know what, to be safe, we might want to. What do you think, Hope?
Can we grant the one and
Yes.
come back for the other?
Because there's people affected there that
Yeah.
that might want to say something.
Well, we could then tonight approve this one and
Right.
then come back with another amendment to the state for the other one in like,
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Mike.
We would be checking with the other property owners along that strip
I
then,
would.
and to make sure that.
So, yeah.
But they don't sell alcohol.
Correct.
Right.
No,
You
they
know,
don't.
but you still want to get their blessings, wouldn't you
Right.
think? Yeah, okay.
So we could
That's all.
approve this one, submit it, and then have Eric work on getting those other properties, and then we can amend it again. You can
make
you
it
can
a
amend it numerous times. There's no limit. It's limited by basically the size, not necessarily, and we're way below what we're allowed, way below.
Our population dictates how large our door can be and how many we can have.
And we have plenty to expand.
Heidi, do you have a
Yeah, I mean,
Question?
if we limit it to like the bike and hike trail that cuts through Walgreens, I'm just trying to keep it out of the residential areas. And I'm visualizing residential on Summit, and then we're walking through their backyard, you know, if they're going from the pub. So I think that we should probably have that be a public meeting, as we were just discussing. But I don't have any reservations about the path that we've talked about, because it goes past our public buildings and commercial buildings and doesn't really impact residential.
Okay, Jeff?
Just a question about that. It could be limited to the north side of the street even, right? So that would just be the one residence at the corner of Franklin and Summit.
Which is already on it.
Which is already in there. So I don't think it would include any other residential along that strip, except maybe, no other residential. That residential is already in there. We just did the north side of the street. But that's something Eric could talk about, and we can just worry about that later.
Yeah, I feel like if
Okay.
we do that, because this one has all been vetted,
Yeah.
and we did have the public hearing specific to this address, so we can just have Eric look at that expansion, and we can submit an application a month or two later. That is not an issue.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Okay. So we said a whole lot of things about what this motion should sound like.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think we already did that.
Okay. Is there anyone from the audience who has a comment or question?
Just a small section.
Okay. Back to council. Heidi.
I would like to make a motion to approve the new DORA boundary, that to include board and bevy. And is this needed, the emergency
Yes.
clause needed? With the emergency clause.
Second.
And then we need to say any other language. Okay, very good. All right. Yes, discussion. Heidi.
Yes. Well, I have to say that this is my neighborhood adult beverage facility. And so, and plus, I think it's a wonderful new business. And I want to, make sure that their business is supported by the tools that we have. I know that the downtown establishments have really been grateful for the DORA. I want them to be able to join the community as long as it doesn't impact the residential neighborhoods. I'm good with it, and I really support it.
Further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Okay, we'll go into the Finance Committee, Mr. DeLeon.
I think we're going to talk about the tax budget. She promised me she'd be quick.
I promise. So
Way
this is
too
just
early for her.
a brief
No.
discussion about the tax budget that has to be approved by council by July 15th and submitted to Portage County by July 20th. This is just our preliminary, the start of our budget for 2025. So what this will do is give us the revenue that we can base our expenditures on for the 2025 budget that will come towards you in November, December.
Questions? Seeing none, anybody?
I was just going to say, for the new people, this is routine.
Yeah.
You'll get into
Housekeeping.
your roll your sleeves up kind of budget discussion, as you said, at the end of the year. This is kind of like the first step where you just basically set the parameters, the bookends, I guess, for expenses and revenues. State requires us to submit that to the county by July. And as long as we have enough members here tonight, we'll meet that, but we can also get an extension, and we'll get the approval next month. But yes, so hopefully you'll support it, I guess is my point.
Further questions? Can we make a motion? We already did make a motion?
I can make a motion.
Second.
Okay,
And it doesn't have to have the emergency, with the emergency clause?
with emergency.
Yeah, please.
Tax
So-
budget, make a motion, tax budget with emergency.
Second.
My first one, sorry.
Thank you.
You did work. Further questions from anyone? All those in favor?
Aye.
Guess nobody. Okay, that was the first one.
So the next item is for insurance coverage. So we were told by our insurance agent that the bonds, the surety bonds that we hold on Mr. Roller, myself, and Brian Huff, by the controller, they're being phased out, and they're being moved to a part of our regular insurance coverage for employee dishonesty and faithful performance of duty insurance policy, rather than the surety bonds. So if any one of us, the three of us, were to do something illegal, you would still be able to come up after us personally, but this just kind of covers us for mistakes that are out of our control, potentially.
It's a housekeeping, it's procedural kind of housekeeping, updating, keeping us current with the sort of state of the industry.
Correct.
Questions? Seeing none, anybody in the audience? Since there's nobody, back to council.
Move to approve with emergency.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Last item I have is a budget amendment number 4 for the year. Anybody has any questions?
Questions? That's my job. No. Is there a question from council? Anybody in the audience? Back to council.
Move to approve with emergency.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We have Mr. Bowling.
Don't blow it, Jim. Mike's rolling through the finance
Yeah.
committee here.
Okay, Grant, Sunrise,
Yeah.
to be brief, we're looking for your approval to submit a grant request to OPWC for Sunrise Boulevard. The work on the road has been delayed due to the bridge work that's scheduled to start August 12th. We're seeking your approval to submit for the application and to sign the agreement if we're awarded.
Questions?
The residents have been very patient. We appreciate their patience. This is a couple rounds in for grants that we've gone after, first for the bridge, and so it is a little later than we would certainly hope, but we're pleased that we're now at the point, as Jim pointed out, construction will start, and then we can fix the road. So, thank you, residents.
Anybody from council? Okay. Heidi?
So, I was looking for this. I wasn't sure what was going on with the road.
So the work is going to include replacing the pavement and fixing the poor curbs, sidewalks, drive aprons, basically the whole street.
Okay. And if we get it, then we could start construction July?
The grant becomes available July 2025.
Yep.
That's a challenge because it's one way in and one way out, right? I mean,
That is correct.
so that's been part of the sort of engineering construction challenge is you have to live there and get in and out, but we're replacing the one way to get in and out, so.
We've done it before.
Yeah.
They take care of it. With their patience.
Further questions? Anybody in the audience? Back to council. Go
Move to
ahead.
approve with emergency.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for Finance Committee. We gotta go into executive session. I need a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to move an executive session to consider the purchase of property for public purposes, the sale of property at competitive bidding, or the sale or other disposition of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use property in accordance with Section 505.10 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Second?
Second.
Melissa? Roll call.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Ms. Selko?
Yes.
Mr. Clapper?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
I need a motion to excuse Roger and
So moved.
Chris.
Second.
Second discussion. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We'll give you 5 minutes to find the door.